And hello and welcome to the Weekday Warriors of Wrestling for Monday, November 28th, 2022. It's been a few months, guys. We had lots of things happening. Patrick got married. I was at the
Yay!
wedding. It was wonderful.
Thank you.
There was lots of wrestling fans there. There was the NWO Wolfpack theme also in your wedding.
Yes. That was when we were planning the wedding. That was one of my things. It's like, look, you can literally pick the song for everything else, but I want the NWO Wolfpack theme for when the bridal party enters. And she, God bless her, she let me have it.
Yeah, and that's where you got to take your stand, is the NWO Wolfpack theme.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So we probably couldn't have picked a worse time to go on a break because the most stuff that ever happened in pro wrestling happened.
Oh, what happened while we were gone?
Well, CM Punk turned out to be a monster. When did wait a second? You got married in
September.
Oh shit! I forgot that this stuff happened. I forgot that we were in person. This stuff happened after, like the Great Bomb and everything happened while we were there. It was wow, yeah. So okay, yeah. CM Punk turned out to be a total psychopath, which I guess isn't super shocking. The Elite were suspended for I don't know
2 months.
But for I guess optics reasons, because it sounds from all accounts that they didn't really do anything wrong. AEW's ratings, although the ratings for the post for the last episode Dynamite came out and they were okay, but AEW's ratings have been not as great as they had been last fall. WWE continues to kind of do great attendance, despite the fact that have you watched any WWE since the Hunter takeover?
I have. I actually watched War Games this morning.
All right, so I'm going to ask you two questions.
Okay.
First, how would you compare Vince McMahon's WWE in June of 2022 or July or whenever he got kicked out, and Paul Levesque's WWE in August and beyond?
Some of the problems are still there, namely the shows are actually the pay-per-views are back to 3 hours, which is fantastic. That part's great.
I wish Tony Khan would follow that.
Yeah, we all do. It would be nice. But...
Remember when he was I went to Double or Nothing, and I didn't mind the show. Like, I don't actually mind the shows being long when I'm there, but when I'm watching them, like, I fucking fell asleep like midway through Full Gear, which is happened last year too. I mean, it was because I was in Denver and I was on a time change, but still, that show was way too fucking long. But I don't mind the shows when I'm physically there. But I remember in Double or Nothing, he was like, we gotta push the Hangman Punk match back because the playoff games are on, and I don't want people missing out on it, which is stupid because nobody's going to be like, well, I'm watching the playoff game, but you know what I might do after the playoff game is over is order 1/4 or 1/6 of a pay-per-view so I can see one match. I feel like that wasn't an actual concern that he should have.
I feel like once you've picked the pay-per-view, like your choice is made, or once you've picked the playoffs, your choice is made. You're not
going to get those people back. So it's not like later on they're going to be like, it's 10:47. I think I'll order this pay-per-view that's 92% over so I can see CM Punk and Hangman Page. I don't think that's going to happen. There was probably 4 people that did that in the entire world. But anyway, after that pay-per-view, he's like, yeah, we're going to try to pull these things back. And then he fucking didn't. They're still 4.5 hour shows. They're not the 5.5 hour show that Double or Nothing was, but they're still really fucking long.
It's not just the length of the pay-per-view. I could almost forgive the length of the pay-per-view if it wasn't for every match goes out there and tries to be the match of the night, and it's just exhausting. Once you get into match 4 or 5, it's like, guys, can we have a Hacksaw Jim Duggan match, please, where he just says "oh" and does a clothesline and pops the crowd a little bit, and then we go home? Can we have some filler here just to kind of slow things down and get us ready for the awesome stuff later in the card? It's the way that pay-per-views are, especially in AEW, is just mind-boggling to me because it's just every match has to go 15, 20, 25 minutes and it has finisher kickouts and everything tries to be amazing. And classic line from The Incredibles, when everybody's super, nothing is. And
I was gonna use the Syndrome line too, but you beat me to it. Yeah, I like that was one of the reasons I liked the Christian Jungle Boy match at All Out, was because it was just like so different, and it was just like this weird squash attack, like 2-second match. Everybody was like, there's so many people that were annoyed about it. They were like, oh, how could you how could you blow up the feud like this? And it turns out Christian was injured, but still, I'm like, that's like, I mean, we've had so many like quote unquote bangers. There's all these bangers. Like you need something different. And like, so as those of you listening know, Patrick knows, because I talk to him about it all the time. I have like multiple rewatches or watches that I'm doing, for different time periods of wrestling. I have my Raw and Nitro rewatch. I have my like mid 80s WWE watch. And when people talk about the Attitude Era, and I know it's over romanticized and everybody talks about how great it is and everything, but when people talk about the Attitude Era, they always talk about how fun those shows were. And you watch those shows and they do kind of fly by. And that's not because they had a bunch of great matches on it. They had like a lot of the time 0 good matches on it. I mean, like the time period, I'm in like late 98 now. So they had like the fucking Headbangers and the Oddities were on shows, and like it's not great.
Oh, you look at that roster in 98. It was not, I mean, if they didn't have Stone Cold Steve Austin, they would have been royally screwed.
Yeah, no, towards the top of the card, it starts getting better. You get Austin, Rock, Foley, Triple H is in there. So like Undertaker, that stuff is generally good, but the rest of it isn't. But if you look at those shows, everybody enjoyed looking at those shows. Go to cagematch.net. Look at the times of all those matches. They're like 2 minutes and 10 seconds, 3 minutes and 5 seconds. And like that's most of them. And maybe the main event would be like 10 minutes or something. And this is not a specific critique to AEW. It is absolutely a critique of WWE as well. But there became a point where they're just like, let's put these like great matches on TV. And Dave Meltzer has talked about this. Dave Meltzer says that this is a bad idea. He's like, if you have great matches all the time, they're not going to be great matches, because like they used to be rare and the audience was like, oh man, this is awesome. And now they're not rare. So nobody, like, regardless of whether you realize it or not, you're becoming desensitized to it. So it doesn't like do anything. Like having, if I love cake and I eat cake every single day, it's probably going to be less fucking special if I have it all the time. But if I have it like once every 6 months, then it's like, oh wow, that's delicious. This cake, I've been looking forward to it for so long. There's like moderation is a thing. And I'll be honest, Patrick, I don't think you suffer from this problem, but I 100% do. And I think a lot of other people do it. I don't think wrestling is taking advantage of the reality of our attention spans in 2022. And what I mean by that is like Vince Russo, for all the stupid shit he's done, and he's done a ton of stupid shit, would say, and I think this is correct, he's like, we would never let a match go through a commercial break. We would end it in between and we would have some sort of hook or something and we'd tease something and we go, that's how we do it. That was in like 1998. In 1998, when your entertainment options were watch the 60 channels of television, which of like 15 were good, or you could like read a book or a magazine or something. And that was like kind of it. I mean, you could go on the computer, but you had to walk over to your actual desktop, wait for AOL to load. And like, I mean, there was only so much to do on there at that point anyway. There wasn't streaming options. There wasn't social media. There wasn't anything like that. There wasn't the endless entertainment options we have now. So that was back then. And now we're in 2022 where everybody has a phone in their hand. I have ADHD, so this is like an actual problem for me, but I would guess that a lot of other people just have this problem in general. And that's like, you get bored and you flip on your phone and you're just scrolling through your phone and doing whatever. And I just kind of tune out. And I think most people do that. But instead of going in the other direction, Pro Wrestling has said, let's make our matches longer. Let's put 20-minute matches, even though people have worse attention spans than they had 23 years ago when the matches were shorter. So, like, to me, I think it's like not just on the pay-per-views, but especially on the TV shows. Like, they need to do something about how they present this product. I mean, WWE's in a worse spot because they have a fucking 3-hour Monday night show, which is insane, and you have to like throw shit on there. I mean, that's why Nitro had like slightly longer matches, not by much. I mean, it wasn't like Nitro was putting out a bunch of 15-minute matches. They weren't, but they would have a few more 8-minute matches and things like that. But you know, like, yeah, it's a major problem, and I don't think it's a winning viewership strategy. Now, you can say, Eric, you're like, I don't give a shit what's going to be popular. This is what I enjoy, and I say that's perfectly fine, and there's nothing wrong with a great match. I love great matches. I'm just saying, we probably, in the age of like YouTube being such a entertainment force and TikTok and things that are short and quick and snappy, maybe we need to rethink a little bit about how we digest our professional wrestling.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, going back just the last few years, some of my favorite matches have been the Brock Lesnar matches. And that's part of it. It's because they're kind of these quick little adrenaline rushes that are quick to the point and they're exciting. Like the match with Goldberg at WrestleMania, or even though it was a little longer, like that squash match over Cena, which was unlike anything we had seen up to that point, and really changed how Brock Lesnar matches are viewed. That was such an important match to establishing him. And everything, it's not only that they're long, it's also they all kind of follow the same script most of the time, which is also, I was watching War Games, and it wasn't a bad show, and thank God they kept it to 3 hours. But you know, you've got 2 War Games matches on there, and after a while everything just starts to look the same. It's like, I feel like I saw this match in the opener. So, you know, and the biggest highlight coming out of that match, it wasn't somebody diving off the cage, it wasn't some kind of crazy spot, it was Sami Zayn hugging Jey Uso. That was the major highlight of the whole show, which just goes to show it's like story matters more than anything else. Like, you can have all the action in the world, but ultimately it's story and character development that drives and brings people in and gets us interested in this.
The action should service the story. I always like talk to people like, what do you think makes a good match? And like, because I mean, in-ring action is absolutely important, but you know, why is that a good match? Well, because he did this, and this. I'm like, okay, so if somebody does a Hurricanrana or this thing, that makes it a good match? Well, no, I mean, it's because you care about, you know, who's in the match. I mean, you make a great point about like, oh, you see so many War Games matches. It's like, remember fucking Lockdown? Remember how like stupid that was? Everything was in a steel cage. It's like, okay, remember all those shitty like WWE Hell in a Cell pay-per-views, which fortunately Triple H is now ending, but you'd have like 3 Hell in a Cell matches and you're like, who gives a fuck? You remember when there was like 3 Hell in a Cell matches that existed? I'm not going to include those 2 shitty ones that happened on Raw that nobody remembers. But like when it was like the Michaels Undertaker, the Undertaker Mankind one, and the Triple H Foley one, it was like, wow, that's like you know, these are big deals, you know. And then they're like,
they saved it for when they needed it.
Yeah, it's going to happen once a year, and there's going to be 3 of them, and you're going to have to get into a feud that necessitates it.
Yeah. What, you didn't think that Randy Orton and Sheamus had a red-hot feud that warranted Hell in a Cell?
Oh, shit. Did they wrestle Hell in a Cell?
I think they did. If I'm not mistaken, they did more than once.
No, that did more than once. I mean, I think there's probably, it's like Hell in a Cell 2010, right? That was when I was like tuning out because 2010 was a fucking nightmare.
You know, and it sounds like we're you know, complaining about stuff that's brand new. A lot of this stuff has been brewing for a long time, and we were saying back then, like, this is going to create some problems because gimmick matches aren't going to mean anything, stories aren't going to mean as much, matches are getting too long, and programming's getting too long, and it's just hard to digest it all. But I will say the shows have been better under Triple H. I will concede that, but they are still too long now.
What about them are better?
There's less stupid creatively. There are some stupid storylines, but then there's stuff like what the Bloodline and what Roman Reigns is doing with Sami Zayn. That stuff is really good. the bad comedy has been pretty much written out of the show, which I'm more than okay with that because some of that was just painful to sit through. And again, not all the storylines are winners. The Miz and Sam Shaw stuff was I thought was terrible, but the shows have been a lot easier to digest than they were previously. It doesn't feel like Vince's fingerprints are on everything. People, when they cut promos, they actually sound like they're talking like themselves, and it's not just Vince writing words for them or telling them what to say. And Michael Cole actually sounds halfway decent at the booth now because he doesn't have Vince screaming in his ear. It's a bunch of little things that they're doing that make the product a little bit easier to watch.
Now I'll ask you two things.
Okay.
One, is the commentary less like corporate branding sounding? Like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm. They don't do it as much. They one thing that they do, and I noticed this while watching War Games, they like to reference the past a lot in a good way. Like they mentioned Dean Ambrose and Sting on the show, which you wouldn't think they would do because they're both on AEW right now, but they're integral to Survivor Series history because that's where the Shield debuted, and Sting is very important component in War Games history. So they felt the need to mention Sting. I'm like, oh, that's cool. They're actually referencing their history a little bit. That's kind of nice.
All right. And the second question, do they still have invisible cameras?
Yes, they do. And not, again, a little bit actually at Survivor Series, they were doing this bit where Sami Zayn was talking to Kevin Owens on SmackDown, the show before. And it was like, where does Sami Zayn's loyalties lie? Is he with the Bloodline, or is he going to betray them and go back with Kevin Owens? And Jey Uso, who hasn't liked Sami being in the group from day one, is kind of like, he asked him backstage, it's like, who you talking to? And all this other stuff. It's like, well, why don't you just go ask the cameraman who filmed it? But it's like, okay, whatever. It's on the same show. Maybe he didn't catch the footage. But then on the pay-per-view, Roman's talking to Sami. It's like, all right, Jay says you were talking to Kevin Owens. Is that true? And it's like, well, Roman, why don't you just go find out? Pop the episode in and just watch it. I'm pretty sure it's on Peacock. You probably get the footage. And it's that type of weird stuff where they reveal secrets and stuff and act like...
that's my least favorite shit, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's not great. It doesn't pop up as much, but when it does, it's kind of groan-worthy.
Yeah. All right. All right. So what else about the show did you like? We'll I guess give a review of this, and then we'll talk a little bit about Full Gear from last weekend.
Okay. Yeah, it was a very, like I said, I liked that it was only 3 hours long, and the War Games matches took up like almost half the show by themselves. So it was like, if you like War Games, that one's got you covered. Now, granted, I'm not a huge fan of, and Hell in a Cell kind of ran into this problem too, where it's like you're trying to do these death-defying violent matches in a PG era that doesn't allow blood, so it just doesn't feel as authentic to not have color in a War Games match, or like the threat of color isn't even present, and that just kind of takes me out of it a little bit. But they did the best they could with what they had, and especially doing two of them on one show, which is overkill. I know they wanted the women to do it too, but in my mind, it's like, look, if you want to do a women's War Game match, just do a women's War Game match. Just do one. Like I don't care which one you do, just pick one. But yeah, so that was little problems here and there. The Ronda Rousey match was awful, but thankfully it was also the shortest match on there. Finn and AJ was okay. The U.S. title triple threat was actually a banger. It was Lashley, Seth, and Austin Theory. That one was pretty good. So it was overall a pretty good show that was, didn't overstay its welcome. So it was fine.
All right. That sounds good. I didn't see it, so I'll take your word for it.
And then Full Gear, which I think is still going.
Yeah, Full Gear might still be going. I mean, I liked Full Gear. I don't know. I don't like it as much as I liked All Out, which I really liked.
And got ruined because of CM Punk.
Yeah, right. And I think I like Double or Nothing better. And I don't know, the main event was better than Revolution was. I don't know if the rest of the card was. We'll talk about it. Let's go through it here. Let's talk about the main event. MJF is the champion now, as we all know, because it happened like a fucking week ago. So
hasn't been on TV yet, which I like.
Yeah, which I mean, he's filming the movie. It's like, yeah, I like that angle. That next night, I mean, I like the finish. I know we all saw it coming. I mean, I'm of the belief that the audience is going to cheer MJF no matter what. And it's a Rock in 1999 situation, and everything that people say, like people, you know how like you know how like being like a short guy or a small guy in wrestling is a problem until it isn't, or if somebody is in the past was that size, then they'll give you a bunch of reasons why it's okay. Like they'll be like, people would tell you, oh, you're too small to be in pro wrestling. Well, what about Roddy Piper, who was really small? Ah, well, Roddy, he could talk really good. Roddy could talk. What about Bob Backlund? Oh, well, Bob Backlund, he had a grade A wrestler pedigree. Oh, yeah. What about Randy Savage was not too small. Oh, yeah, he had a big build, big personality, and they'll go on forever about all these exceptions of why, like, oh, those guys were okay. And I've heard people say, I'm like, well, why can't MJF be a face? And they're like, well, he can't. He's MJF. He's a heel. You can't have him as a baby face, like kissing babies. I'm like, well, you don't have to do that. You can just like direct him towards heels, and he just makes fun of the heels then. And then they're like, well, no, then you can't do that. I mean, like who would like someone like that? And I'm like, well, The Rock. And they're like, no, it doesn't work like The Rock. I was like,
John Cena was that guy.
Yeah.
He was a total douchebag.
Yeah. And well, Rock was like a horrible person in kayfabe. He was like a bully to everyone. He was like, and they're like, oh, but he's not this giant like Samoan guy that can believably kick everybody's ass. I'm like, but like The Rock was like not a giant Samoan at the time. He was like a goofy guy that like got beat up by everybody originally. So like it's these ideas that like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Like you can do whatever. Like, I mean, his finisher is the people's elbow. Like people just like get in their heads too much and they overthink things. And like I think we got to a point with MJF after the work shoot promo. Like, I think it's going to be very difficult to make him a heel, and we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But I mean, like for all the talk of like, oh, they did some babyface stuff with him. Like, yeah, but they also like tried to not do babyface stuff with him, and like he was still getting cheered. So like, I think it's going to be like swimming upstream, and they can try it, but I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's hopefully what I'm hoping they do is like they'll just kind of read the room and see how the audiences react to him, and if they continuously cheer him, that's like, okay, then let's just lean into this direction and just go that route. But then I think of Britt Baker. I mean, she got like a similar reaction, maybe not to this degree, but a very similar one where everybody just after a while just started cheering her, but they still kept her heel. So it's like, okay, are you just not going to turn her face? But I don't know. We'll see. I was excited that I was excited that he won. And to me, that was worth the pay-per-view because I wanted MJF to win the belt. But we'll see how it all plays out because he's getting his chance to shine now.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of like, all eyes on him type of deal. It's a good point about Britt Baker because, I forgot about that. But it's also like, it's why I always think like the Cody stuff was so weird because Tony Khan was like, oh, like there were those reports that like Tony Khan doesn't think Cody has as much value because he's being booed. I'm like, but you have heels being cheered. So like why do you care about that? But I don't know. It's just, it's such
take what you read on the internet with a grain of salt. Like, I'm not even, like, the whole CM Punk Elite situation, I'm not even fully 100% convinced that the whole thing was a work. So who knows?
Yeah. I'd love it for me to work. That'd be great. You can get a money feud out of that. But
if I was Punk or the Bucks, I'd be sitting in a room right now. It's like, all right, look, he's an asshole, but let's make some money with this.
I don't think the issue's on their side.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, no.
I think the guy that will cut you out of his life for looking at him slightly awkwardly is the problem. But let's get into this rest of this pay-per-view here. We had Jack Perry and Luchasaurus doing Shawn Michaels and Undertaker Hell in a Cell for some reason.
Sure, why not?
Apparently that's Luchasaurus's favorite match, so they did a bunch of like tribute stuff to that. So it was fun.
A lot of guys are doing that now, and it's, I don't know, that kind of takes me out of the match when you do.
I know, because you're like, oh, look, it's the 1, 2, 3 Kid Bret Hart match. Isn't that fun? Yeah, no, I agree. I just want like Dax Harwood and CM Punk to just be on an indie somewhere, just endlessly giving each other sharpshooters, and it's like a Twilight Zone episode. Yeah, the match was fine. I mean, you'll find a theme here that most of these matches are too long. Death Triangle against the Elite, I liked a lot. I thought it was a surprise ending, and then we found out it was a best of 7 series, so that's fun. The fuck CM Punk chants were hilarious, so that was kind of great.
And the Elite's return felt like a big deal too. That was like a pay-per-view worthy moment.
It did, because when Kenny came back to join them in the tournament for the first time, it didn't feel like a big deal, and this did. So I think this was like a better re-debut, shall we say.
Mm-hmm.
Jade Cargill beat Nyla Rose. Jade has had the belt for like a year now, right?
Something like that, yeah.
I think the plan was to have Stat like step up and be like somebody to like possibly take it off her, but then she got injured, so we'll see where we go. But,
I will say this: I love Jade Cargill's Chitara getup. She rocked that outfit.
She always has a cool one. She did She-Hulk at All Out.
Yeah, she always looks good in it. Like she looks like a star. I mean, maybe in ring wise she's a little green, a little rough around the edges, but she looks like a star.
Yeah, absolutely, totally. What do you think of the 4-way with for the ROH title?
Well, one of my major problems with AEW right now is that there's way too much focus on Ring of Honor on the show.
Oh God, yes, you're right. It's
all the titles floating around and everything. It's bad, and it's a shame too, because this match itself, pretty good, nice action-packed match. They're just fighting over one of the 700 titles they've got floating around now.
The only thing I like about Ring of Honor being on AEW is that Chris Jericho's storyline to destroy it. That's been pretty good, but everything else has just been like, like the fucking like Tony Khan bought this thing, which I'm convinced because CM Punk really wanted him to buy it. And like, if there was no more obvious thing than he did not have a plan for this, then it's just like, it's like the idea people were like, oh, and he's got to deal with Warner or something, and he did not. They're like, oh, it's more content for a streaming service. There's no streaming deal right now. They're like, and he said in the press conference the other day, he's like, well, I don't want it to be on YouTube. Yeah, fucking A, you don't want it to be on YouTube. like this, and I said this when he bought it. I may have said it on this show, but I was like, what? Okay, so you got like brands and products and stuff, and theoretically, like, okay, let's use sodas, right? Coke is like a cola taste, and like Pepsi's like the competitor, and then Sprite is a lemon lime type soda, so that's its own category. Then you've got a diet soda. Hey, that's the same taste as Coke, but there's no calories in it. And then you've got Dr. Pepper, and that's its own like thing and stuff. What the fuck is the benefit of ROH? What does ROH offer that AEW doesn't? AEW is just a successful big time version of ROH. So to me, it's not like he bought like GCW or something, because that's like a different product, right? Like that's like an extreme ECW. That's an alternative to what you're doing. AEW is just ROH with like competent leadership and funding. And like he didn't like buy like, I don't know, like Stardom. That'd be a different product. Do you want to see like Joshi wrestling or something, or like DDT because it's wacky and crazy or something? Like he bought like Coke,
the thing that inspired his thing.
Yeah, Coke bought Pepsi, but like it didn't even buy Pepsi. It bought like RC Cola, because like normally when companies buy other companies, like, well, let's get their fan base and like their infrastructure. ROH didn't have any of that. It didn't have a fan base. It was like dying. It was dead. So like he bought it so WWE didn't get like the video library, which I guess, but then he didn't have a way to monetize that. So like, I don't know. It's just, it was such like, I think a dumb move. And if you look at when Ring of Honor was introduced to AEW shows, that's about the time when AEW's ratings started to decline. Um, and it's like, I don't think anyone's interested with this. I'm an AEW fan. I want to see AEW. I don't want to see Ring of Honor. If I did, I would, like, I don't know, go back in fucking time and watch a Ring of Honor show in 2007. I don't know.
Or
But
yeah, he doesn't want it on YouTube. It's like, well, you've got 2 AEW dark shows on YouTube. Just turn one of them to Ring of Honor. Why is that such a problem?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I have all sorts of theories that he's overestimated his relationship with Warner and thinks he's in a better spot than he is. But that's, neither here nor there. All right, Soraya came back and I thought had a really good match, all things considered, with Britt.
Yeah,
and by Soraya, I mean Soraya, because that's how you say her name, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, solid match for a first match back and everything. I think it was, again, this is one of those matches I wish they'd maybe saved it for later. Maybe give Soraya a little bit more time to, work the ring rust off a little bit and build that story a little bit more. Because this show was, again, we talked about it before, but this show was just loaded with storylines and loaded with everything. And it was just, I felt like this match should have felt bigger, but instead it just kind of felt like another match on the show, unfortunately.
Yeah. Samoa Joe is now the dual secondary champion by beating Wardlow and Hobbs in a 3-way match.
Not a fan of that.
Yeah, I'm like you, and I think the value of Samoa Joe in 2022 is very fucking low. So yeah. And it's funny too, because I think I'm watching Wardlow and I'm like, I like Wardlow. I do. I think he's good. I think he needs new theme music. I think he needs something that like has a little bit more punch at the beginning to it and like lets you know he's coming out. But I watch him and I'm doing this 1998 watch, and it's just like, no matter how many times they try to do it, like, I don't know if there ever will be another Goldberg, because you watch Goldberg and like, you can book and do whatever, but for whatever reason, Goldberg is the most fucking shoot-lit intense person on the planet. And it's not even like he's a good wrestler. Like, he's like fucking hurting people. But when you watch a Goldberg match, maybe because he was actually doing it, but like when you watch a Goldberg match, you believe he's beating the shit out of these people. And like, everybody responded to that because he just looked like insane. And every time like WWE tries to recreate someone, whether it's like Ryback or whatever, or even with Wardlow, I don't know if that intensity could ever be replicated. And like, it's just like, I like Wardlow, but one of the things that Goldberg did, and that's like what you always want these guys to be, right? It's just like, he looked like he was killing these people. And like I said, maybe that's because he was. I don't know, but there are times where Wardlow does that, but it's not as often as I would like. And I don't know if that's a place that they can get to, or we're just in an era where either Goldberg is one of a kind, or we're just like, the wrestlers are too safe to like do the things like that look like they're killing. I don't know. It's just, I'm just hoping for that type of guy, but I don't know if he exists.
Yeah, it's again, I'm like you. I went back and I watched some of those old 98 Nitros, and it's just, Goldberg was a legit phenomenon. And maybe part of it is because he just got over completely organically. Like, they weren't trying to book him the way he did. He just naturally got over. And maybe you can't book a Goldberg. It's just gotta happen organically. I don't know.
Yeah. Where were we? Full Gear. Jeff Jarrett's on a pay-per-view in 2022.
You know what? I've always had a soft spot for Jeff. I kind of like, and I don't. Did you see Ric Flair's last match?
I did not. I heard about it.
Oh my God. Okay. For as bad as Ric Flair was in that match, and that was like, I legit thought he was going to die right in the middle of the match, which might be what he wants. I don't know. But And for as bad as Flair was, Jeff actually looked pretty good, and I was like, man, I wouldn't mind seeing Jeff show up and get another run somewhere. And here he is in AEW.
Yeah, he's got more lives than anyone else. Which is funny because he was doing really well with WWE's live event business.
Mm-hmm.
Like
his departure was surprising.
His what?
His departure.
Yeah, especially with the roadie always taking over from Double J.
Yeah,
always taking a spot.
Yeah.
Jamie Hayter beat Toni Storm for the real women's championship. Now it's no longer interim. Thunder Rosa is either not coming back or whatever that was announced. So
that was another weird one. Like,
yeah.
We talk about the Elite and CM Punk and their situation. Apparently, there's something with Britt and Thunder Rosa too. But
yep. And then we have the Acclaimed to defeat Swerve in Our Glory. The Acclaimed, Billy Gunn, once again, part of one of the hottest acts in tag team wrestling.
Good for him.
Yeah.
But I mean, we talk about guys getting organically over. I was so happy when the Acclaimed finally got the tag titles because I was like, those are guys who I watched on AEW Dark.
Yeah.
Get over, work this act that they'd concocted together, get this whole entrance down, and they were slowly gaining support from the audience. And then here they are. They got rewarded for that, which is what AEW was supposed to be all about initially.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the Acclaimed has become what maybe they wanted Private Party to be, because Private Party ultimately, and you and I said it back then, it was like they want them to be something, but it's just not there. It's just not there. But the Acclaimed, they kind of came out of nowhere and made something for themselves. So good on them.
Yeah. So yeah, I thought it was a good show. It wasn't a great show. I like the ending. It's good that MJF's the champion. We'll see what he can do now. But yeah, that's where we are.
Yeah, and that's my big thing with AEW right now. I'm excited to see MJF as the champ. When he came back at the end of All Out, I was like, and we all knew it was him under the mask, but it was still like a big moment, a big reveal, and then Punk had to turn around and ruin the whole thing. But
because he works with children.
He works with children. Yes.
Yeah, he does.
While eating muffins.
Yeah.
But yeah, MJF, he's the champ now. We'll see where it goes from here. But that creatively, AEW needs to work on a few things. Number one, figuring out how Ring of Honor fits into this whole thing, because this whole we've got 7 more belts floating around. That's got to stop.
God, it's like I know. Are you ready for Final Battle, Patrick?
Oh, I am. I'm so excited for a company that hasn't run a weekly show in like 2 years, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, since the pandemic.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be great.
Don't worry.
Chris Jericho will be on the card, which is nice, but
yeah. So when he won the title at Arthur Ashe, which I was at, I figured, I'm like, oh, they got a TV deal or something because Jericho's the champion. So you want to go in with like your best foot forward, who would be the biggest like star. And then nope, nothing happened. So here we are. Have you seen any of the other Tony Khan produced Ring of Honor the shows?
They did one other pay-per-view. I think it was Death Before Dishonor.
No, they did 2. They did Super Card of Honor and Death Before Dishonor.
Okay, I did see them, but they were kind of normal pay-per-views. I didn't really think.
Yeah.
You know, it might also help having a Ring of Honor roster. Like, who's actually part of Ring of Honor? That would be nice to know.
Let's go. Let me go to the Wikipedia page. I don't know. They don't even list them. Wait, hold on. No, nobody's listed here. I mean, 2, 1, 2. Like most of the champions are AEW signed wrestlers, like Jericho, Garcia, FTR.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, they should put the belt on Jonathan Gresham again.
Yeah, that guy. He's gonna point out his PWI 500 ranking to you if you don't believe him.
I hope that story's true because that was one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
It's pretty ridiculous. What else should we talk about?
Oh well, I think we've got all the big stuff. I think right now we're just kind of waiting to see where everything goes moving forward. In regards to WWE, there's who's going to be Roman Reigns' next challenger? Because that's kind of this ongoing question of who's ultimately going to dethrone Roman Reigns. And I think the leading candidate right now, even though he's injured, is Cody Rhodes. But it's this constant discussion because he's been champion for almost 2 years now, and it feels like we're at a point where
no. He's been champion for over 2 years.
Over 2 years. Oh, damn.
He won it in. Was it the September?
Oh, you're right. It might have been
September 2020, I think.
Yeah, so he's been champ a long time, and now we're at a point where it's like, all right, who's going to face him? Some people are suggesting Sami Zayn, and they could do like a Mick Foley thing with him where he ultimately gets out from under his suppressors and wins the title. So maybe they could go that route. But for right now, it's like they're kind of running slim pickings on people who could face him.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. Yeah, so he came back at SummerSlam, and then at Payback the next month, he won the title. So he's had it since August 2020.
Jeez.
Yeah. Spanning 2 presidents. Yeah, no, I mean, that's fine. I think Cody, Cody's a good choice to knock him off. And if you looked at the timing, like the timing for that injury is perfect to come back for the Royal Rumble. I know they said like 10 months or something, but like it's really like 7, which is like perfect to be back for the Rumble. So I would be very surprised if he didn't win. And then you do Cody and Roman at Mania. I mean, that's pretty fucking big.
Yeah, what a return for Cody Rhodes. It's so weird. He was getting booed out the door like at the end of his AEW run, and then he comes into WWE and he's like the biggest babyface in the world. It's just weird how
it's totally different audiences.
Yeah, that's a clear piece of evidence of it. I've heard Bruce Pritchard say before that like, oh, WCW and WWF, they were just the same audience flipping back and forth for the most part and things like that. But I think here, I'm not going to necessarily argue against him, but here it's like, okay, you can clearly see that there's a difference between the AEW audience and the WWE audience. Because
Bischoff said that too. He's like, I agree with Bruce Pritchard. And I think the reason Pritchard says that is because they're like annoyed at the fact that when WCW went out of business, they took like 3 million people with them and they never came back. And I think that's like, I think they just didn't. I mean, I think some of them went to WWE, of course. I mean, it wasn't exclusively all WCW fans, but like they didn't like WWE, which was always. It's funny because as I'm watching my '98 stuff, and this will become more apparent as I go into '99. But like they start trying to be more like WWE, and like on the surface, that seems like such a good idea, but like you're shedding this identity. You're shedding this like Southern wrestling tradition, which they always thought was a negative. And like, but there was like hardcore people that were like into that stuff. I mean, it'd be like if AEW is like, well, we don't want to appease like it's despite all the fact that stuff I just said about all the long matches, like you do need to super serve your core fan base and make sure they are happy. But yeah, no, it's just AEW and WWE, totally different audiences. I think that's clear based on just watching the audience. They're just different.
Yeah, so we'll see where they both go. Like I said, WWE's gotten better. Their shows have generally speaking gotten better. We're no longer having a weekly discussion about was that the worst Raw of all time. Those have seemed to have stopped. And AEW, I'm hoping that Full Gear is kind of like, all right, that's an end point. Everything leading into this, the whole Elite CM Punk situation was messy. Ring of Honor's been kind of messy. Let's just stop here and like not necessarily do a hard reboot, but just kind of like move things forward in a different direction that's a little bit more clearly defined, shall we say.
Yeah, agreed.
That would be nice.
All right, so before we go, We had some issues with our email, but we would like to invite everyone to send your questions to the Weekday Warriors of Wrestling mailbag. Patrick, where can they send their mail to?
You can send them to weekdaywarriors2020 at gmail.com. The link will be in the description.
Yeah, and any questions you want on the air, we will read and answer and have fun with them. So thanks everybody for listening today. And oh my God, I almost forgot our sign off. Oh man, that would have
That was
been
like
terrible.
we're rusty or something.
I think we're a little rusty. All right. So for Erik, Clancy, and Patrick Kelley, we are
Signing off.